Greetings, YouTube. Today we're looking at Hollow Earth. It's a very large subtext here. The long and curious history of imagining strange lands, fantastical creatures, advanced civilizations, and marvelous machines below the Earth's surface by David Standish. And look at that cover. And the back is almost as good. I don't think I can get rid of this book because it's just got so many awesome illustrations and pictures from books and stories and things. This is just, and it's just, that cover is so beautiful. Ah, it's such a great, I'm so glad I picked this up. So the author covers the entire history of the Hollow World, Hollow Earth, I guess that's what you want to look at it. It starts basically in the 17th century and then slowly moves through time. And it builds upon itself. So the first early stories became the foundation, and then other people told stories, and then they're referencing the earlier works as though it's, canonically true, and then the next people. So you get this layering process, and each making references to the other. And a lot of it is about utopianism, believing that the areas underneath the earth are utopias that we need to aspire to. Interestingly, I didn't know this, that Edgar Allan Poe wrote a novel dealing with a journey to go to the North Pole to find the entrance that was supposed to be up there to get into the Hollow Earth. I didn't read that novel. It was the only novel I ever wrote. I didn't even know he had written a novel. I had been exposed to his short stories. I was unaware that he'd written that novel. I thought that was kind of cool. I haven't gone to Poe's. I haven't gone to a Poe museum yet. Should do that someday. And there was a cult where they not only believed that we lived on the inside of the Earth's shell, and there was nothing outside. There was just formlessness, and our entire universe was on the inside of the Earth. I know it makes very little sense. They were known as the Koreshanites, based off of someone who called himself Koresh, not the David Koresh cult, that Christian group that was destroyed by the U.S. government in a really stupid raid. No, not them. This is an far earlier group. The guy, the founder of it, just called himself Koresh. I don't know why. And this cult actually lasted from the 19th century into the early 20th century, and they actually founded a small town in Florida. And again, it was all about creating utopias. And they really believe they actually came up with this weird measuring device that was very long. So they were trying to show that we're on the inside of the Earth and not on the outside. They failed. But they proved it enough to keep themselves happy, and I guess that's all that really matters now, isn't it? And how it was used as the last frontier. Because in America, they saw very much that the frontier was disappearing as the white Westerners moved west and wiped out all the Native Americans. So they needed a new frontier, and a lot of them thought of the Hollow Earth as being the next frontier. One of the theories that was up there is that the hole in the North Pole was 4,000 miles in diameter. 4,000 miles. Now, if it was 4 miles, that's big. If it were 40, that's humongous. Nope, 4,000. The idea being is that you could have enough light coming in at an angle as the Earth turned to allow there to be life in there. There were theories that all the animals in the Arctic would go inside the Earth in the wintertime and they come back out in the warmer weather. And they didn't actually try to survive up there in the cold because Westerners couldn't fathom how they did it. Yeah, nature's a lot more complex and interesting than apparently the Westerners were aware of. Talks about how it was used by many different authors for fictional stories. Tarzan went there. Dorothy went there. So I didn't know that. I didn't know Tarzan or Dorothy had gone to the Hollow Earth. A lot of the time there were some really severe sexist and racist undertones, or sometimes overt strains in the stories that dealt with this. And there was often a lot of like heroes captured by, weird natives, they escaped. 10 pages later, heroes captured by weird natives and they escaped. They weren't complex stories, let's put it that way. They were very much, Saturday matinee serial kind of stories. Um, but the book was a hell of a lot of fun to read. The author's got a really great style. It moved along as a nice clip, kept you interested, and you just drew you through the book. And I really appreciated that. And again, it's so darn pretty. Look at that. So a book that's fun to read, very attractive, full of cool images from literature and maps that were supposed to have been real, things like that. Some of the theories involve UFOs and aliens and super science. There's so much you could do with this. Now, I think I own the Hollow Earth supplement for D&D that came out during the second edition era, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I also think I have Hollow Earth, which is another role-playing game that's a pulp vibe about going to the Hollow Earth. And the pulp era is just 19th century through the pulp era, perfect zone for Hollow Earth. I watched a Hollow Earth movie that was a modern take on Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth. It was horrible because in the modern era you can't do it. It makes no sense. We know the science too well. But at the end of the 19th century, or all the way up through the pulp to the Indiana Jones era, before you get into the nuclear age, into World War II, that's perfect zone for Hollow Earth. If you want to, do a terrestrial, do a real Earth, as opposed to doing a fantasy version. So yeah, highly recommend this book. I think it's be useful for anyone that's looking to create a cool story, or just information about history and literature and the weird things that we come up with in our pursuit of racism and utopia and things like that, and cults and all kinds of stuff. It's a book that is chock full of fun and lots of information, and it ranges over a huge number of topics, which is the kind of thing I like, because if anyone has watched my videos on books, I have an interest in a huge number of topics. So yeah, Hollow Earth by David Standish, highly recommend it.